And now we're going to go over to Doug Bebb of the People's Party of Canada.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you all for coming. Special thanks to Melissa Pache, Chanel, and to Maureen for putting this together. And doubly so because at the last minute, they were able to add a Zoom component to allow me to be present here tonight, even if only in virtual form. My name is Doug Bebb, and I'm the People's Party candidate for this 44th Canadian general election. I'm appearing tonight by Zoom because the establishment candidates all claim to be terrified of appearing with a healthy, unvaccinated person. But this is just the beginning of segregation in Canada. In BC, under the same NDP party, of which Abby Lewis is a member, I found out today that vaccine passports will now preclude me from participating in the Seashell AGM, to which I had a pre-existing invitation. John Horgan could simply have waited one more week until the election was over. But that was not part of the payoff Trudeau offered when he came to BC to subvert the election in this province. Neither the Liberals nor the NDP have any respect for democracy in Canada. In fact, all the establishment parties have sold out to the same globalist elites that now dictate policy to the Trudeau government. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. I didn't need the 30-second cue. Way to go. That's a thumbs up from the moderator. It is now a chance for Doug Bebb of the People's Party of Canada to ask a question of another candidate. Over to you, Doug.
Okay, this is for John, and I'll rebut. The Nuremberg Code was brought in after World War II to prevent forcing medical experimentation on people. Nuremberg Code 1 reads, "The voluntary consent of the human subject is absolutely essential, and that's without any element of force, fraud, deceit, duress, overreaching, or coercion." So, John, how can you, in good conscience, represent your party when it has publicly advocated for vaccine passports like the other main parties, and in so doing is breaking the first principle of the Nuremberg Code and is usurping most of our charter rights and fundamental freedoms?
Thanks, Doug, for the question. The Conservative policy is to recognize that Canadians have freedom in their health choices, and I'm absolutely committed to that. Doug, I think you know by now that I'm the one who launched the Canadian Constitution Foundation in 2003 that stands up for individuals when their rights are being menaced by governments. I'm the one who set that foundation. It's a charitable foundation in motion, and it has only expanded to this day. It's one of the things I'm proudest of. The Conservative approach is to say vaccines are indeed the best tools against the pandemic. We have to fight this thing, and we have to fight it for Team Canada. So we're encouraging everybody to get vaccinated. And yes, we're saying it's under constitutional authority for the provinces to manage the passports, and so we're deferring to the provinces, which, by the way, is almost exactly the same as the Liberal policy. And so we're deferring to the provinces, which, by the way, is almost exactly the same as the Liberal policy. And so we're deferring to the provinces, which, by the way, is almost exactly the same as the Liberal policy. So what else would we do to deal with this pandemic? If we do form government, we're going to create a public inquiry into how the pandemic was mismanaged. There will be a preparedness plan, a national plan that will improve domestic capacity so we're never caught short in creating vaccines again. We'll make sure that stockpiles are replenished and that we don't end up having to go elsewhere to get medical supplies if we do hit another pandemic.
Thanks, John. Back to you, Doug. You have 60 seconds.
The question was about vaccine passports. I got an echo here. Is this working?
We hear you well, Doug.
We hear you.
Okay, well, the question was about vaccine passports, which is essentially and very different from vaccination itself. Winston Churchill said, and of course John didn't answer the question of the passport matter, Winston Churchill said, "Some men change their politics to match their principles, while others change their principles to match their politics." By setting policy weekly, as they have with the vaccine passport matter, flip-flopping not long ago, based on poll results and focus groups, the Conservatives provide a good example of the latter, people that change their principles to match their politics. Simply put, they've abandoned conservative principles in a desperate attempt to regain their position at the feeding trough.
So, Doug, I want to make sure you've heard that. You're going to be rebutting Patrick's answer to this question. What will you do to get rid of cancel culture in Canada? So, yes, what will you do to cancel culture?
Oh, gosh. I don't even know where to start on this. It's quite a question. I think in Canada we need to do everything that we can to protect free speech in this country. But we also need to be very careful when we have misinformation that's getting out there. And I think that's something that we're not immune from in Canada at all. And we very much see that south of the border, but we're also seeing it creep up in Canada. We're seeing that very much in the COVID-19 pandemic, particularly when we're seeing people that are more concerned about what they're reading on social media than what the science and health experts are telling us. So that's something that I'm very concerned about, and I think we need to be very cognizant of that as well. Maybe I'll just end it there.
Okay, thanks. And we'll go over to Doug.
Well, I've been writing madly here. I wish I had this question in advance. First of all, we'll repeal all the liberal censorship bills. I think it's C10 and C36, where they're trying to compel speech, to censor individuals on the internet. We will deny funding to post-secondary institutions that curtail the speech rights of their faculty and of their staff. And we will respect the Canadian Constitution when it comes to freedom of speech. We will amend that so that the speech of Canadians will be classified on the terms of the incitement of hatred, of violence only. So it won't be a rule where people will be able to bring action, in these human rights tribunals based upon their feelings being hurt. But if there is a threat of violence, then we will have these hate speech laws.
That's time, Doug. And now we'll go to Doug Bebb of the People's Party of Canada.
Well, thank you. There is no credible plan for climate change. China and India are building coal-fired plants by the hundreds, and their CO2 emissions are going through the roof. Even if Canada reduced CO2 emissions to zero, it would make no global difference. The establishment parties are arguing over the arrangement of deck chairs on the Titanic. The addition of candidate-to-candidate questions in this debate was good. We should have had more of this. Questions like, John, why does the Conservative Party leader have Andrew Scheer in his shadow cabinet when he was accused of stealing from the Conservative fund for his kids' private schooling? And Patrick, why have the Prime Minister and his lawyers tried to censor alternate media and contravene the freedom of press guaranteed under our charter by not allowing Rebel News to attend the English language debates tonight? And Abby, we are already in debt over $1 trillion, and your new Green Deal will only add to this terrible burden. How many more hundreds of billions of dollars are you prepared to spend before we no longer have the ability to ever balance our budget or repay our debt? And Michael, how does your party plan to address its leadership crisis and keep its base from jumping ship? The People's Party is the party of freedom. We believe in small government and in the sanctity of individual rights. Our party is outside the establishment, and so we present
30 seconds.
The lead Canada for their own benefit. They do this by controlling the establishment parties, have been controlling their leadership conventions. So you can expect to see many more smear tactics used against us. Don't believe a word of it. The People's Party is a sensible, in fact, the only alternative to the corruption in Ottawa. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.